Evening, everybody. I'm had a little bit more trouble getting started today than I wanted, but we are here, so let's have a good time. I wanted to say Oh, come on. I wanted to wait a minute. Something strange is going on here. Okay, there we go. So yeah, I wanted. I had a chance to go a little bit earlier, but I've been having some trouble on the GOG launcher. So if anybody, I know it's like a 1 in a million chance that somebody's going to be able to answer this, but this is the nice thing of being an influencer, a thought leader, where sometimes you get to actually, you know what? I'm curious. So one thing I have noticed is um, Rogue Trader on GOG is trying to update. It downloads the entire download and then fails to install, claiming that it can't contact the GOG server. Um, I'm sure if I look online, I'll find an answer for that. But I was fiddling around with that. And then I will also confess I was also a little late because I started watching an episode of Slow Horses, and my goodness, I like that show. But then I sort of realized the time, so I tried to scramble. So sorry about that. But where are we? Mm. Okay, there we go. Sorry. Oh, I also forgot. I believe there is an AMA for Weather Factory in the coming at the end of the week here. Let me just double check that. Okay, so yep, Friday the 13th of December on the Weather Factory subreddit. It says something may arrive, so I imagine that this will be something related to the um, something related to the third game that they've been teasing. And I'll also note that today's revelation, a snippet from another world, 12 years ago in deep Krakow winter, you were hollowed out by the worms from under the world. So you had to go away for a while. You're back, and you've something with you, something curled inside you, something that will open all the doors. So I'm sure a lot of you sort of know um, I try to avoid some of the speculation on the subreddit and stuff like that because I haven't really been able to dive in deep. But the first thing I would think of with that quote would have been Spencer Hobson. But I'm just trying to think on the other hints that have been given in terms of the third game, whether or not whether or not this fits the other conditions, because they've sort of hinted a couple of other things in terms of sort of characters that people have wanted to see more of, and it's like, well, Hobson, already is in Cultist Simulator and is already um, makes an appearance in Book of Hours, so I don't know if that really counts. Anyways, just a recap of some of the other things. So, some more items on Reverend Timothy's Christmas tree. New Lucid Tarot is in the shop. So that was the last batch before Christmas. I wonder if there's still any kicking around. Looks like there's still some more available. I don't know. Like when I take a look at the estimate in terms of delivery. Here it says order today to get it by the 19th to the 28th of December. So obviously if you're trying to do a Christmas shop, this will be, you're definitely testing the limits of that. And again, as a Canadian, like mine's sitting in, mine's sitting in a warehouse somewhere. And there is absolutely no end in sight for this for this this strike. So I'm gonna get mine at some point, but I'm pretty sure I'm gonna get mine after like everyone has finished their has like gotten their subsequent releases. But I know that the Lucid Tarot is really a highly anticipated release, so I think a few of you may be looking forwards to that. Now, some of the things that were done in the past, which are no longer applying, there was half off the Lady Afterwards, half off the notebooks. These are absolutely wonderful, by the way. They're nice sort of deluxe products. So for those of you that do like the stuff on the Etsy and you've maybe been waiting for a little bit of a discount or something like that, again, I'll recommend that you check out the Advent calendar for the simple reason that the 24-hour ones are, you know, they're the sort of thing where if you want them, how do I put it? Like if you really want to, if you really want to buy that stuff and you sort of find out the day after the sale is done, you know, you don't have access anymore. It's a shame, right? So I don't know. I'm doing my best to talk up the Advent calendar. If you just give me one more second here, if I sound distracted, I slightly am. So I'm just going to take one more minute before we get started, and then we'll jump in. Okay, cool. So I'm trying to stay on top of everything, and I thought there was a stream-related thing I needed to deal with, but I don't. This is the stream. So the overall plans for today, we should be already opening the second vault. We've got all of the stuff that we found inside it still ready to go. Actually, I think we opened it already. Yes, we did. So we've got all of the work involved in sort of parsing that out. And then, of course, I have a growing list of Newman texts that I haven't read yet. But part of that is simply because I have... are we not at... Oh, no, we're first thing in the morning. That's why. But yeah, so in terms of texts that I haven't read yet, we've got 5 in the house already, and then 2 more from this vault. And then, of course, there's another one which we won't talk about quite yet. But let's take a minute here. I think the best thing I can do is just pause and unpause, because we should already be on... Or at least I thought we were reading... Yes, we are. Okay, so we are reading the A Tower Falls. Now, remembering here, the goal on this one was preliminal meter. And I completely forgot what the... Solutions and separations, right. So this one's actually going to involve a bit of work on my part to figure out. So let's just write this out here. So solutions and separations. So that one's going to be Moth and Knock. So Stolen Secrets helps. What I'm doing right now is getting the inventory of memories that I can use to level this up. So Secret Thresholds. So the Cheerful Ditties or the Bittersweet Certainty doesn't help. Confounding Parable doesn't have Moth or Knock, neither does Revelations, but Patterns does help. Okay, then we have Hindsight, which isn't helpful, but Salt will help. Satisfaction doesn't help. Regrets don't help. Nothing for Gossip, nothing for Foresight. Contradictions don't help. Fears don't help. Earth Signs don't help. Storms don't help. Savage Hymns don't help. Impulses do. And I think that's it. The last of the categories here would be intuitions. So under the Newman, so we've got 3 that we've read so far. So that would be, we get Inescapable Confinement from volume or the first edition of Towards a Fundamental Aesthetic. The next would be A Final Understanding. Now that doesn't help me too much because it gives us 5 Rose, 5 Sky, and 5 Winter. And then there's The Sun's Weakness, which gives us 5 Grail, 5 Lantern, and 5 Moth. So in this case, we've got 2 Newman that help. Could be 2 Numina. But what we're going to need eventually is a 7th memory. So this would be the point where we make an argument for either a occult scrap, or alternatively, named a riddle. Or Curious Hunch. Actually, sorry, we needed 2 more either way. Okay, so I've got the basics in place. I'm definitely going to want to restore that I'm definitely going to want to restore the Confounding Parable. So let's take a minute and work with that. Oh, you know what? I don't think I'm going to be able to, for the simple reason that we've used we use preliminal meters, so I'm not... Or sorry, we can get the Named a Riddle, but I can't get the Curious Hunch because I'm already using it for something else. But that's fine. What we'll do here, the Named a Riddle needs Moth. Of course. This'll still do it. Conceive a Mothy Riddle. Edicts Liminal with Scholar level Moth plus Memory creates Named a Riddle. For heaven's sake. So the Gossip doesn't do anything for me. It's, you know, it's convenient to have, really. So, all right, Conceive a Mothy Riddle. We'll wait on the Confounding Parable. We're already getting the Occult Scrap back. So at this point, really what we do is we just load up on as many of these memories as I can. Clearly, I'm probably going to overwrite one of them through reading the book already, but I'm not too worried about that. Right now, I just want to get the source material for the next few levels. I messed up. I think we did the Matters and Deeds of Serpents, so I'll do a manual for Departure. I actually feel we read that one recently too. Oh, I can't because that one's in VAC, so we will do the Matter and Deeds of Serpents then, which is also a VAC text, so Temptations of Architecture it is. Alright, so carrying on, let's take a Tryst. I can't even remember. I think I was on to the Radical Measure. We will read Deaths of the Moon. I wish I remembered where these were a little bit better, but... And I think we're on to the 26 Enticement, 7 Torments. Alright, I'm just going to take a second here to make sure I didn't leave anything obvious. So, Stolen Secret, Secret Thresholds, Pattern Salt, Impulse... Right, the Newman. So I'm going to start with the... I'm going to start with the scroll, just because we haven't read that as often as the Cosley work. Alright. Now, I won't lie, it would be nice to prepare for a Salon as well, but I think I'm going to make today's priority the lessons and then maybe whatever kind of... whatever what do they call them, caches I can open up. The thing is that I don't actually need to do the Salon the first thing in the next period. It's perfectly fine to to let it wait. And I have been sitting on this Ragged Crossroads for a while. Like, each season that goes by, I run into the risk of having to make a decision on that at a time when it's inconvenient. But you do what you can with that. I don't have a place for it right now, and I want to focus on other things. So it's a risk. It's a risk I'm taking on in favor of accomplishing other things. But I think we're good to go for today. The main focus is going to be leveling because we're about to cross over into summer. We definitely know what we need to do to open up the sealed vault. Actually, one other thing I'll do, I think I'm going to bring in Mr. Kill. Mr. Kill always enjoys to catch up with me. Mr. Kills can spare a few hours to help a friend. And while I'm at it, we'll do brain work. I could offer help with correspondence and arithmetic. There's no school in Brandkrug, and not everyone here knows their letters. Mr. Kill can always spare a few hours to help a friend. Okay, so we're just going to keep chatting with Mr. Kill. Actually, before I do that, I don't remember if I fed the Stimfling. Yes, the Stimfling is as happy as... Well, it's a mischievous little grin. I choose to interpret it as that anyway. Mr. Kill, Ryan Spry, doesn't mind stopping for a gossip. Alright, a half-familiar alphabet like reversed Greek or upside-down Latin. My mouth feels oddly dry as I trace the letters with my fingers. I can't read it. So this one I kind of bungled just because I've already used the Fusine for something else. So we'll read the Gospel of Zacchaeus again. I could have also done the Velletri interviews, I suppose, but... We're going to wait for the recording to finish, and then we'll also employ our preliminal meter towards generating a curious hunch. What have I learnt? Nothing is history when first it happens. All right. So there's a mild temptation to start opening these caches, but we do have 30 seconds before I'm going to be able to level up a skill. So I think I'm going to resist the temptation. Especially because there's going to be a lot of reading. Dead men don't tell no bloody tales. Well, who'd listen? I actually also got a nice little message at work today. I had written something that I put a lot of work into. I collaborated with a colleague, but I wasn't 100% sure how it had been received. That, you know, like any kind of workplace, you'll do work, and your direct supervisors may, you know, offer some very kind words, and I'm very, very grateful that that is the case for me. But you always kind of wonder, right? Has anything you've done had any impact? Like, you it's not like you're going to change a company's complete strategy or something like that with one well, I mean, I guess if you like work for Microsoft, there's kind of a culture of that, or maybe like Amazon or something. But like it's not main character syndrome. What you do want to make sure though is like, did I do something to justify my salary for this period of time, right? Because I have options. You obviously want to make your boss happy, but you want to make sure that you're not just sort of pushing paper around and looking like you're working as opposed to working. But as it was, somebody got it, and I think they were actually just looking for a general request, but as it happens, it wound up in my inbox. So I was like, oh, hey, you did read it. So that was kind of nice. I do like it when it's accidental stuff like that, because I'm sure anybody would want to say, it's like if you read reviews of something that you've written, like a creative work, and it's like, oh yeah, the critic declared that it's the finest thing that they've ever seen, they must end their life now because they'll never experience such sublime beauty again. I'm sure that's the review that anybody really wants to read. But let's be real here. You're never going to see that. But just something on the practical side. Actually, one other fun one that I found is that when I think of the movies and like TV shows that I worked on, there are the ones that I can say that people might know. And there were definitely a couple of like name actors that I've worked with. So like I have a rough idea in terms of my audience, and I can usually judge sort of who would be the one to mildly impress the group. But like the thing is that that's always a little, like, name dropping is really tedious, and I'd like to hope that I am interesting enough on my own that I don't need sort of the reflected glory of some some star, basically, or star might be a bit of a stretch. But the funniest thing is that when it's come up, the stuff that I can't even remember the names for half of them come through, like movie of the week sort of stuff. It turns out that people are really, really interested in those. And I keep kind of forgetting, I really like Stanley Kubrick movies. He's probably my favorite, still my favorite. Obviously, there are very talented filmmakers working today, but I think Kubrick is still that like bedrock for me. And obviously, Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, these are also really, really talented filmmakers that I would hold in very high regard. And I'm also the sort of person who, maybe not all of them, but like I would watch actually I have watched an Ingmar Bergman film like more than once and really enjoyed it. And, like Winterlight, I probably am never going to get bored of that movie. Or like Andrei Tarkovsky, I know, Stalker's probably having a moment again, but like I liked Andrei Rublev, and I know not everybody necessarily cares for that one. So I definitely get that, like, I'm not necessarily going to be the very good judge of popular taste. Which is fine. Like I embrace that, right? Like it's just nice to be curious and open to things. And, it's nice that once you hit a certain threshold of things that you are curious and open about, it just tends to be self-reinforcing, right? This is when I do get very frustrated when I see conversations about university and everybody being if you want to annoy me, the guaranteed way of doing that is to say some equivalent of, in school I would have liked to have learned taxes, but boy, I'm sure glad they taught me the Pythagorean theorem. I suppose shame on the school for assuming that you were the sort of person who would be able to understand principles and then be able to apply them to your own life. I don't actually find taxes that hard to do. Perhaps because I don't make enough for that to be complicated. I don't know. But yeah, like, or the idea of like, oh, why do I have to do the breadth course, right? So like if you're in sciences, I think the trick is you do like a logic class in philosophy, because basically you're doing something that you do in like a discrete math course, or I mean even there's proper like logic courses in science anyway. Or then if you're like in arts, you know, you try, there's a couple where it's like, you know, the science of drawing or something, and it's, you know, it's about the golden ratio or whatever. And like these are not bad courses on their own, but they completely defeat the purpose of breadth requirements. Like, you go to university not because it's vocational training. Like, we're really at a point here. I'm not going to try and suggest that you can become like a world expert just from YouTube videos. But if you want to learn a skill, or if you want to learn how to do something, between like YouTube, the fact that most things can be done without cost, you know, through one way or another. So if you want to learn programming, like, sure, you can buy MATLAB, you can buy Mathematica, but most programming languages are available for free. And in fact, most of the training is available for free. Python, you can read the manual, and the tutorial's pretty good. I always find it very interesting when people ask, how do I learn Python? And they have not even bothered to look at the manual, because it does actually a decent job of getting you started with it. There may be, you know, others. Obviously, when you have like tutorials and things like that, you have a specialist in terms of education who may be communicating it in a way that matches more to you. So I understand that there's a role for you know, there's a role for buying those sorts of things. But, you know, do you want to write? Well, first of all, like, write. That's going to be an important part. But on top of that, right, like Purdue has the online writing lab. All of the rules of grammar and sentence structure are there, right? Libraries exist, you know. There's plenty of resources available there. You know, I am somewhat particular on dictionaries, so I like the fact that my local library has an online access to the Oxford English Dictionary, the proper Oxford English Dictionary. So, you know, I'll use that. And I think I mentioned this before, but actually the libraries where I live are sort of founded with an endowment from Andrew Carnegie, who very specifically did that so that people could sort of raise themselves up. But this is going on for a little bit. But the reason why I'm kind of harping on about this is because, you know, the reason for the breadth courses in university, and the whole point of going to university, is so you can have more than just, you know, I learned how to make the widget and now I'm going to go and be a widget maker. You know, you have apprenticeships for that. You have all sorts of other resources that do not involve 4 years of, you know, of doing, you know, classics or Russian or, you know, whatever it is you want. But I would also suggest that probably if you would like a higher paying job, obviously trades can pay quite well. So I don't want to deny the ability there. But like, if you want the sort of higher paying knowledge work that you see in so many aspirational TikToks, you do actually want to be able to think abstractly about things, right? Like, the ideal would be that you are not going to just go off to some consulting firm and try and siphon off your part of the, you know, the revenue that somebody's already making. But you are going to be able to deal with situations that possibly nobody else has encountered before, but you have the ability to think abstractly enough and draw from other experience to be able to navigate that. To me, that's the really exciting part, and it's why I sort of wanted to switch into that kind of work when I had a little bit of a clearer idea in terms of what I was figuring out what I wanted to do. So all of that to say, like, obviously I'm kind of talking my own book here. I'm reasonably happy with where I'm at and where my interests are. I could maybe stand to do a little bit more reading than like TV watching or game playing, but um, it's always a little sad, I think, when I see the, the when are we ever going to use this argument come up, um, just because like it's this idea that knowledge is this big list of like things that people have already, like knowledge is basically just finding the right person to quote, the right gobbets, if you've ever seen or read the History Boys. um, and I don't know, I just, there's a lot more, first of all, it's a lot more satisfying to live outside of that, and it's a lot more, um, I think it's just a lot more useful, to operate outside of that. Like, I think there's definitely an overstatement in terms of where AI fits right now. And when I say AI, I'm specifically referring to like large language models and such. I think they actually do have a role. I think the the maximalist claims for the LLMs are they're a little annoying because I don't always know if they're made in very good faith. But I think the reaction against tends to be, driven by, well, I want to do this thing and it seems like I'll be replaced by this thing. And I obviously want to have sympathy for that. But I'm not entirely sure that speaking to the truth of the situation that we're in right now, as opposed to like, you probably want to honestly evaluate how effective the tool is at replacing you, rather than, not wanting to see this horrible thing coming and sort of saying, okay, yeah, no, it's obviously bad, or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I sort of feel like these prediction machines, to use a term from Josh Gans and his co-authors. Like, I kind of feel I am now a widget person. That would be one I would be a little more worried about. And so sort of this wish of, I only want this strict vocational training for 4 years, as opposed to running into things I haven't seen before. I feel like you're kind of setting yourself up to, to be in a bad position when those types of models do get implemented inside of workplaces. I don't know though. I'm rambling now. I'm just going to unplug something and then we'll jump back into the game. I am actually also very intrigued by some of my former coworkers who have been experimenting with LLMs, and one of them was learning Python, and they actually find it very helpful for getting stuff done. And I think that is a very encouraging sign. I have actually gone away from using LLM generated code and stuff that I've done because I've been burned a few too many times by little errors that I only realize after the fact. And this is partly on me for not writing better tests, or any tests in some cases. But it is something I want to pay attention to, that somebody who isn't as invested in understanding the language is actually finding that they're more effective with the tools. And I say this because I remember when I TA'd computer science, some of the worst students I would have would be the ones who already knew how to program, because they wouldn't pay attention in the early classes where we're doing basic addition. But when it came time to write a program to solve a Sudoku puzzle, like any Sudoku puzzle, or say that it can't be completed. And remember, this is a first-year course. Like, this is introduction to programming, so it's definitely very ambitious in what it sets people up to do. They couldn't do it. Like, it's a case where the ramp up was so quick because we taught a method of thinking about programs that isn't the sort of thing you get when you just bang your head against Code Wars problems. Okay, and I just spilled some of my tea. That's fine. We'll deal with that later. A Tower Falls. The phonograph is packaged in a glossy amethyst purple card with the words "A Tower Falls" in 9 languages on both sides. There is no other identifying information at all. A recording of uncertain origin, inexplicably compelling poetry recorded by a speaker with a rasping, rumbling, impossibly deep voice in the language called Vak, which probably isn't spoken by more than a few dozen living scholars. The poem speaks of a 4-winged war, a 4-mouthed king, a 4-rayed sun, a 4-cornered stone. It speaks of a tide-washed hunger of the heart. It speaks lastly of its own conclusion, when it might be spoken in dreams before the deep door by a messenger of histories. So this was the one that sort of clinched it for me in terms of one of the last puzzles. We're not going to do it right now, but this was the one to finally be like, oh, I get it now. Okay, so another confounding parable. But we'll return to this in a little bit. The Temptations of Architecture. The antiquarian and nyctodromist Ambrose Westcott writes of the dangers of doors, with particular reference to a house in the Bounds named Treowin. No doubt they have come to regret the ambitions of their winding stair, even now in Treowin. A silver sea is unwisely visible from a rash window. Westcott explains that the wheel locks, the charge holders of Treowin, have had recourse to dramatic measures to prevent oniric encroachment, removing the entire top floor of the building. Nevertheless, he writes, the business of the Moon Hall has begun to touch the other business of the house. The Radical Measure, manifesto for experimental and dangerous-sounding invocatory poetry, written in some time in the 19th century by Dr. Aaron Peel, a notoriously inconsistent and incoherent text, apparently produced in a tearing hurry. The hours have little time for poetry, Dr. Peel avers, but they have a tremendous amount of time for poets. How you doing tonight, Algrins? As the rows open, Dr. Peel explains, an enduring memory opens to the horizon. This is a way of saying something that cannot otherwise be said and is best only written with one's eyes firmly closed. "26 Enticements, 7 Torments." The painter Niels Fredrik Malsker notoriously attempted a series of paintings based on the torments. By the 5th torment, the demands of the painting had grown so dire that he died of blood loss. The diagrams in this text are thankfully less detailed. The enticements of the Grail outnumber its torments, but its torments are its final nature. Birth is the 1st torment, and thirst the 7th. Through the enumeration of the Grail's enticements and torments winds the sorrowful history of the witches of the dry land, the ordeal of birth from 2 wombs, their struggle from and supplication of the Grail, the yearning for union which drives them all. Extremely tired, but happy to lurk in zone. Oh, well, I'm happy to provide that service for you, Algrins. I do hope you're feeling a bit better soon. I'm trying to balance out my bedtimes a little bit better. Tonight'll be a tough one just because of the late start, but we'll make do. The Deaths of the Moon, a historical tract on various forms of survival after death. When the heart no longer beats, the Grail may keep the spirit in the body, and an appetite is indicated to sustain. Alukites are the best known, but not the only of this nature. This is the waning moon mode. The full moon mode is the intensification of one element of the soul to the point where ordinary sustention is unstable. Our protector, the generous of hosts, began of this nature, and its generosity remains ungentle. It is possible for the body's health or the heart's core to outpace the other elements, so that a static mode becomes impossible and growth proceeds in dramatic stages until balance remanifests. Oh boy, yeah. It's a tricky one for me because there are lots of times where I'll be doing work that I really enjoy, and so I'm willing to put in the extra time but I am a very bad judge of when that's starting to become unsustainable. I do run into situations where I'll just sort of realize I'm either not working as well, or I'm getting irritated at things that I can't fully explain why I'm finding them irritating. And inevitably, if I reflect on it, I will say, when was the last time I properly took a break? So, there's that. Actually, on that note, I think I'm probably going to take next Wednesday off. I actually don't know if there's going to be like like a separate meeting anyway for like the Dirty Rectangles folks. I know there's not an official meeting, but um, I think that'll be. I know I said it was going to be no interruptions until Christmas, but I think because I will be doing the Christmas stream, it might be a good idea just for me to get a little bit of just a reset, and I can actually really benefit from that time. Although I might just see if I can sort of go out and have a night to myself. Maybe I'll watch Gladiator 2. I kind of want to see it. You work in scheduling in a call center for 2 car dealerships. It's basically retail I don't enjoy at all. I will say there have been a couple of news items lately that have made me... I sort of feel that I have an ongoing fight against misanthropy. Like, I think my natural mode is actually to be a bit more of a misanthrope. But I sometimes feel that that's the easy way out. I try, like, I make a specific effort not to let that take too much purchase in my head, but it can definitely be a struggle sometimes. And I have noticed over time, when I look at how I spend my time, I can see a bit of a progression in terms of where I put that time and what I do. So what I mean by that would be, most first jobs are going to be some kind of retail. You're going to, and like, that's partly just a skill thing, right? Like, working at Starbucks is, I think, actually a pretty decent first job. My actual first job was designing a website for someone, but for my first, like, quote unquote proper job was like Starbucks and equivalent. And like, you learn to deal with people, right? And not always nice people, and sometimes that's good. I also think that's good, just like, so that you learn when you're on the other side of the counter, maybe not to be a jerk. Sorry, my glasses got covered in something. I may need to run and get a cloth. But yeah, like, there's some value in that. And I how do I put it? Like, I've definitely learned, so I think it needs to be in the right circumstances, but I've learned I'm actually not bad at sales. But the thing is that doing sales has always been something that I also need to put effort into doing, like, well. So, and this is tough, right? Like, so, in a perfect job, like, every single day you're going in and you just bring it, right? And you do that because that's your nature. That's who you are. Maybe you're at the top of your powers, whatever it is, right? But that I find a lot of satisfaction in terms of doing that. And, the problem with the sales side of things, so I really definitely got this in the bank, because in a lot of cases, a lot of bank jobs are sales in one way or another. And in some cases, like, I didn't hate some of the credit card stuff, because there were really some the way that the performance structure worked, there were actually genuine cases where putting someone in a better financial position would still count as a proper sale. So one thing I remember was, like, we had a free credit card, right? Something that you get points off of. It's like a good default to put people on. And one of the ways that you could get a quote unquote sale on something would be to take them from a non-fee to a fee card. And one of the things that was nice about that was that when there was a client that would meet a certain, well, see, that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Because what you pay for the fee in terms of a card, like you're getting value for that. I still know I can calculate on my, even with the new cards for my bank, I can definitely calculate what the threshold would be where paying the fee is the smart thing to do. Like if you make a certain amount of money, it is considerably to your advantage to go to like actually what is amazing is they now have a card literally called the Infinite Privilege. I thought this was the funniest thing in the world. But because like Visa has this black card called Visa Infinite. And so, but they wanted to do another tier. It's like a $400 a year credit card. So I'm definitely not getting that one. But they added privilege at the end. So it's called the Visa Infinite Privilege. And I read that because they definitely said like as a card holder, you might want to consider the brand new Visa Infinite Privilege. I'm like, bah! Oh, I'm sure somebody mentioned this in naming the card, but yeah, anyways, like there are definitely times where it absolutely makes sense to take someone from a non-fee. And like, just I'll be clear here, right? Like this is absolutely not doing so without someone's permission. If you were to be discovered doing that, if you change someone's credit card, it changes their number. They need to change all of their their bills. If somebody finds out that like you changed them without permission and they're mad and they want their old number back, there is no way of restoring that. Like it is a massive headache for the person when it calls in. So you will be nailed to the wall if you are found doing that. I mean, there's also consumer protections to think about too, right? So, but like just as a practical matter of it being a massive pain in the neck and wasting a lot of people's times, like it is a huge problem, and you obviously do not want unethical people in your sales force, as a Canadian bank has learned in the States recently. So the fee thing was good because I'd have these people who were like on points cards, and like again, the points are nice. If you're a retailer, you hate them because the interchange fees are higher. But what I would find was like you'd have these people in Canada, like the going interest rate for purchase interest is 19.99%, which I realize to my American viewers will just sound like a loan shark, basically. I know the States has considerably better terms for their credit cards. And so, in order to like retain something that gives you about like, maybe 0.5% in cash value for the purchases that you're making, you've got people paying almost 20%, an annual rate, 20% on their purchases. And like sometimes these are people who just don't know any better. So assuming that they're as with any of these things, lower interest rates do tend to be tied with credit scores. But like the sales I loved to make the most would be to just say to someone, it's like, you need to think about the angle for it. So it's like, I said, do you have a minute? I think I might have an idea here to help you save a bit of money. And obviously people are going to be suspicious about that. So I wanted to say, like, sometimes I'd say it's like, I notice you're paying a bit in terms of interest on that. Like, do you have a plan for like getting rid of that? Or like, and like most of these people are like, I can have a credit card without interest. It's like, well, yeah, if you pay the whole thing at the end of the month, they're like, oh yeah, well, I can't do that right now. So, or sometimes, I mean, the best ones would be people coming in asking for advice, but not everybody does that because sometimes you have you don't always trust your financial institution. But like what I'd basically be able to say, it's like, okay, so here's the deal. I was pretty good in terms of doing the math for that right away. I said, the catch for this card is that it has an annual fee. It's like $20 a year or something like that. And I had been on that card because I wasn't like, I just didn't know how that stuff worked originally. So that was one of the ones I used to get outside of my debts. But basically it's around 12%, I think. So almost cutting it in half. I sort of say, it's like, okay, so here's the deal. Like it has an annual fee, but like, here's what you're paying a month. Here's what you'd be paying on this card. Like this, in most cases, I'd say this thing is already paid for itself in your first month, right? And I think there was a certain, I believe they prorated the fee too. So like if you didn't use it for the full year, you sort of get it back. So it's like the plan here is, you know, as soon as you are at a point where you can pay this card off every month, you want to move on to another one because there's no point in paying that $20 if you're not going to be paying interest. You are paying interest now. You do not want to be on your current card. I said, the catch is this. You got a bunch of points sitting here. It's not a points card, right? This is a card for you to get back on track and make sure that you are keeping more of your money. But the thing that was nice here is that one of the things that the bank did with the points was that you could use those points for these financial rewards. So like we have a account here called the tax-free savings account. It's basically a it's a savings account. You can put investments, you can put cash, but it's sheltered. So you pay the tax on the income, but any gains that you make inside of that account, you don't pay tax on. And that's different from our retirement accounts, which you pay tax on withdrawing. But yeah, like for this one, it's just sort of like a way to grow a certain amount of money without tax. So like I said, is like, you know, the drawback here is that you'll be losing these points, and you got a couple of things that you can do with this. We can turn this into something that'll open you a tax-free savings account. Incidentally, they probably don't have something like that. So another sale, you've opened an investment account with them potentially. I personally didn't do that. I'd usually get them in touch with an investment representative for that. You can either build up some savings, or it is completely fine to, you know, withdraw that cash and put it towards your credit card. That might be a good idea, but if you like the idea of building up a bit of saving, getting the habit of that, you know, you don't need to touch it. But it's like, instead of losing your points, here is a way to sort of get you back on this plan that we've talked about. Some people would still not want to do that, right? Because it's like, it sounds too good to be true. It's complicated, whatever. And I said, it's like, you know, that's fine. I encourage you to just write this down, have a think about it. You know, if you talk to anybody at this, if you go into your bank, they'll set you up. You know, I'd rather, you know, basically in the end I said, I'd rather you like know you have this option rather than me get the sale. There'll be enough people sort of running in. So, and like sometimes that would turn into the sale, right? Where like immediately I've detached myself from the individual sale, and it's just like, okay, this person's actually trying to help me out. And you know, sometimes it wouldn't, and that's fine. It's just sort of what goes around comes around. I'm hoping that my colleagues are doing the same, and that some people will come in. I did actually have someone who called back, and like they got me again. I said, "Oh man, I didn't think I was gonna be the one. I'm really happy I got to talk to you again." And yeah, like they actually sat down and worked it out for themselves, and they couldn't believe how much they were saving. So like those are always the nice ones to see. So like in that case, right, those are sales that feel good. But the thing is that again, it's a sales job. You have targets, and even for something like that where you're helping people, it's something that I need to pull out of myself as opposed to, you know, just having that happen naturally. Now, the thing is that a lot of things in life, a lot of work that you do is going to be some sort of sale. Like, even if you're not trying to do an exchange of money, or there's no haggling involved or something like that. You know, if you are on a team, you know, you are sometimes trying to convince people of ideas, right? Why your idea is the right way to go forward, or, you know, the boss is putting you in a certain direction and it's really not helpful, and you need to find a way of, you know, putting them onto the right path, all these sorts of things. So it's a decent set of skills to have, but it is, obviously environments that are not overtly sales driven. Like it's not, basically I would not do well in the real estate office in Glengarry Glen Ross. So I would not be drinking as much coffee as I do. But yeah, no, I get it, Algren. Sorry, I realize some people maybe don't care hearing about jobs, but it's, it's experience. Like it's stuff that I'm glad that I've done, but it's still not the thing I would be the best at. In many cases, like it's a skill that I have. It's a tool in the toolkit, but I know it's not the one where I'm sort of using 100% of what I can do. And I feel like those, if nothing else, in order to, be honest with an employer about what my capabilities are and how I can provide the most value, like I really do want to make sure that I'm in a role like that if I can. The Sun Disfigured, a scroll of anthropodem parchment written in the golden ink called Uzult. The author of the text calls herself the Elegabline. Sometimes she seems to be Sunset Celia, the Watchman's name. Sometimes she seems to be Lady Tryphon, the Grail-Long. It is unclear whether these are separate entities or the same person. It may be unclear even to the writer. The flaws in the Sun's plan are elucidated. The Sun's plan itself is never entirely clear, but it is a project of some kind to enter, possess, or surrender to the glory, the pure light above the Mansus. The book suggests ways in which that plan might fail. The Sun's sins and the Sun's scars are our salvation. There are histories where they will trap us, prevent us rising to eternity. Worst part about your job is everybody thinks you're upselling, but you just want to get you an appointment and get you off the phone. I'm not trying to upsell. I'm not trying to cost you money. I'm getting nothing extra from other than when you coming in for your appointment. You get a whole $1 if you come in. Yeah. That doesn't sound like a great environment for you, Algrens. I'm sorry to hear it. I probably should have seen if I can apply these already. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so we're one short. However, I should have tried to generate the Curious Hunch. So any old memory will do. Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one. Like, I've always wanted to write an article, and the problem is like, it's a provocative title for a reason. The problem is that like it does invite a certain kind of reaction, but I think the problem is that the likelihood of people actually getting what it's trying to say would be very, very low. So even if I didn't do a provocative title, I would still get all of the negative response without the insight. So I've long wanted to write an article about basically how streaming is for losers. And like the analogy here would be that I am near certain that, I mean, it's been a while, so maybe not at this point now, but I'm like near certain that for a very long time, a bunch of people, even during his success as a broadcaster, people really just knew Total Biscuit as John who couldn't hack it in insurance. And how you can probably notice that there's this big rise in gaming, YouTube, and Twitch, and Justin TV and stuff like that around the time of the 2007-2008 financial crisis. And there does seem to be something, not for everyone, but for a lot of people, there are people who are either laid off or otherwise don't really have any options and just decided to broadcast their hobby. And as it turned out, that wound up being a big kind of a big turning point, and it wound up launching a lot of quite successful careers along those lines. But it is worth it's worth remembering that, like, I mean, so first of all, not everybody is successful in this thing. Obviously, there's different definitions of success, and people have different things that they want to get out of it. But, like, there is something to be said about the fact that not having other options does actually allow you to do stuff like broadcasting. Because, like, what else are you going to do with the time, right? As long as you have a roof over your head and some kind of internet connection, if you're a quote-unquote loser, if you have no other options, then the risk to you is very low. It would be, I imagine, quite a bit more difficult to launch a streaming career if, you're a VP at Goldman Sachs. I'm sure, like, obviously there are a couple of people, I actually can't stand these channels, but, like, there's a couple of people who are former Amazon, like, product managers or something like that. And I have to imagine, like, some of these are people who just wound up pipped. If you don't know this, like, PIP, Performance Improvement Plan, and this is, like, basically the last step before you get fired. Like, I think the idea is that these are generally quite difficult to achieve, but it's a structure in which to sort of cover the company in terms of any sort of backlash for getting rid of you. So, like, for all we know, these are Amazon washouts who are, basically telling people, what's what in terms of tech. Some of these people might be very good, but, like, the thing is that you do tend to find that there's a lot of people on YouTube who present these very, they definitely present this great success. And when you actually look into it, so I remember there's, like, one business guy that wound up in my feed. And, like, the thing is that for British businesses, there's open records on this. And, like, I'm sure he's making money from his YouTube stuff right now, but the businesses that he keeps, like, talking about for his lessons and all of that are just not, like, absolutely nothing anybody would want to aspire to. Like, again, it just happens to be that it's decent rhetoric, right? It's the sort of stuff that people want to hear. It's presented in a way that they like. He's also, an older gentleman. He's got a British accent. Like, it's the no clip of rhetoric at that point. So, again, it's probably not my place to judge what people want. Like, some people are going to want to see that sort of stuff. But yeah, the thing is that, like, it's hard, not just in terms of the time that you're taking, but the opportunity cost is massive if you have something going on. And some people do that, right? Some people do pursue a dream. Some people use the comfort that they've gotten from a well-paying job in some cases to pursue a dream like game development or something like that. But that's kind of the point of an article like that, right? So clearly the provocation in, like, streaming is for losers is going to get people, like, wound up and click the article. And the aim of this is instead just to point out sort of the pattern of success and the conditions under which people can actually make it, right? You need to be able to survive during that building period. But you also arguably need to not have enough attachments to keep you from doing other things. And so, the most likely candidate for success in that situation is someone who doesn't have a lot of options, which by most, conventional standards would be the types of people we call losers. Now, again, I don't think it's right that we call these people losers. There's a reason why that statement is used tongue-in-cheek. Because, of course, these are also massively successful people I'm talking about. But again, that nuance is going to be completely lost by a reading audience. But, or at least an internet reading audience. Apologies to those of you who like the articles. Obviously, I like the fact that you listen to read those articles, and I'm talking about the person beside you. Unless the person beside you is your loving wife or husband, in which case, sorry. And then, of course, now, everybody wants to be an influencer, right? So this is also considerably harder, right? This is basically, having a garage band or trying to be an indie filmmaker or, become a movie star or something like that. It would be better now, I imagine, if you were looking for an equivalent opportunity to find the thing that people are not pursuing as a path to success. So, I don't really feel like there's the indie apocalypse that people keep talking about, so much as there are more people coming in who have seen what seems to be like the cheat code to wealth and success. And like, again, I don't want to blame these people. I've given an example of a local guy who like did the really easy mistake with Steam math, was like, I only need to sell 2,000 copies and I'll wipe out my student loans. And it's like, okay, but like, how many jobs in the world do you work a year and like completely take out your student loans? There's not many. And so like, what is it about your game that like makes it? And it turns out 2000 is actually very hard to get as a game in some cases. For some people, that's like like if that's Battlefield, that is the company's going under numbers. But yeah, like the thing is like everybody's competing for that right now. There are people who are doing this purely for pleasure. Like their reward is the delivery of the game and people playing it. And they are likely, they likely have considerably lower costs than someone who's trying to support themselves or like pay off their student loans on one game. So the idea of making a career out of that is obviously that's a bit of a harder one. That's not necessarily the one where you quit your you quit your maybe not very satisfying but steady development job somewhere. And it's hard, right? Like I get that it's not easy to do something that you love on the side, but like the reason why I did a bunch of game data stuff, and I still want to do game data stuff, it's just, there was a bit of a drought in terms of available data, and then now there's a drought of time for me. But like the reason why I pursued that stuff was just because I wasn't very fulfilled at work. There was stuff that I felt that I could be doing and I didn't. So like I get that it's hard, but it's also important to make sure that if you like if you say you absolutely have to do it, right, you're gonna throw everything to it and roll the dice. Like it is kind of hard to believe it when people talk about that burning, undying passion, when they say, oh, if I just stopped working, at this minimum wage job, then I'd be able to make my game. I can remember a period when I was like, my union was on strike and I wanted to work and couldn't. And there were definitely some cases where there were some projects that I wanted to do, and I found that despite the extra free time, it was actually very hard for me to make progress on them. And so it did raise a certain question in terms of like, essentially just like, how serious are you about this thing, right? Like this is definitely not the signal to me that I have what it takes to push this thing, to a career. It's never fun, right? Like, because sometimes you can invest a lot of an identity into stuff like that. But it's also important to be honest about it, because the thing is that, again, we talked about opportunity cost. What's potentially being held up by not thinking about that, not reflecting on it, and deciding if that's the right path for you or not. What's being lost is the thing that you excel at that you're not considering. So yeah, like as an example, I had an opportunity, a genuine, like a full-on job offer in Canada, in Montreal. That is a decent place to live, to be a data analyst for a publisher, like full on, ready to sign the papers, and I didn't. And I wound up in a job, the one that I'm very happy about right now. But that was over a year on waiting on that. Like there is always the what if question, right? And I in that case, I actually had demonstrated that I was willing to put in the time, even without any kind of financial reward. I actually still would like to look at game data. But yeah, that was genuinely an opportunity to look at like huge data sets, and to be able to, and it would be like working with developers specifically to model and try and help them improve the quality of the game. Um, but the thing is that I'm definitely not doing that where I am now. And so the thing is that if I thought of myself as a one note, um, if I thought of myself as a one note person, right, the data guy and the gaming guy, I wouldn't have considered, the current role, which is better paying and even more interesting. It's still data analysis of a certain kind, but like it's more tied to some of the stuff that I personally was very like. I think this is the big difficulty about talking about this stuff is that like there's the stuff that I personally find very interesting. So, prior to all the conversations about inflation, um, lately, like I studied under a really good guy on price index theory. Um, and like I can definitely talk about chained indexes and unchained indexes and quality adjustment. I can sort of tell you the four superlative index formulas. I can tell you about some of the challenges in trying to measure them. Like that is a very nerdy subset of knowledge that I can get quite in depth with, and I've definitely had the opportunity to talk with some really true like world-class experts on. And it like if I talk like that, even right now, right, if I'm talking this way about it, like this will just put people to sleep. It has nothing to do with the price of eggs. Well, it's the measurement of the price of eggs, but like this is not what people are interested in terms of inflation. But like this would be something that is just in a narrow area of things that are interesting to me. I would know about, and obviously if you can find a little niche that deals with that, that's good for you. And everybody has stuff like this. So the problem is that the enthusiasm that you can communicate for certain jobs sometimes only ever really makes sense to you individually, but you can be amazingly happy about them, right? So it's why I also feel a little bit of a maniac whenever I talk about enjoying work. But like I said, right, like you would have, like, to tell someone who thinks that gaming would be the coolest job in the world, and to say it's like, yeah, I turned it down in favor of something that on paper to them would sound like the most boring job in the world. um, Nobody's going to understand that but you. But it's also important, right? Because it does lead to that kind of satisfaction in terms of work, and it's what also makes sure that when you finish the day, you've worked hard, but maybe you have a little bit more gas in the tank because you're smiling and you don't just want to like again, I really like watching slow horses, so I'll probably watch slow horses anyway. But like, you don't feel like you just need some pure entertainment to like put a little sunshine in your day. Like sometimes that is a decent way. That's also why sometimes personal projects are better done in the morning before you've kind of had a bad day to grind you down. But not everybody's a morning person. I'm actually not much of a morning person. I'm also sorry for those of you looking for more gameplay, because obviously it's a chattier night tonight. The Gospel of Zacchaeus, an extremely heterodox account of the Nazarene Messiah and his works, describing his ascension to the mansus through the opening of his body. 7 were the wounds of his body, 7 the doors of the house, 7 the lesser aspects of the hours, and knock the aspect above all, for the mother of ants is the mother of salvation. The book includes a description of a rite which can be used to raise a corpse to half-life, in memory of he who bled for the wood, but the marginalia claim that the mother of ants no longer permits use of this rite. Okay, so I'm a little worried about my game plan for getting all the memories that I need, but let's leap into the dark. Solutions and separations, preliminal meters, secret threshold, pattern, impulse, salt, sun's weakness, stolen secret. We use a shaft. When I thought I'd understood, I'd only begun. Improve this skill to level 7. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is restore all the memories that I just used. So here we'll do deaths and their evasions, which will require Fusine. We'll do manual for... Oops, what am I doing here? Manual for departure, which will require VAC. We need the pattern. So Lopoly's version of the radical measure. I think it's just impulse now. It feels so little. Let me just double check the list here. Oh no, sorry. The Newman is the one that I'm forgetting. Yeah, so Stolen Secrets, Secret Thresholds, Pattern, Salt, Impulse, Newman, Occult Scrap, Name Day Riddle, and Curious Hunch. Okay. Let's... Hang on. Okay, I am making the Curious Hunch. Okay, so let's read Julian Cosley's work. So what I'll do on this one is I'll combine all of this, and then maybe I'll add in... Well, actually, I was originally going to add in the Occult Scrap, but it'd be better for me to use the Name Day Riddle, which is just going to be finishing up here, because then I don't need to use the Consider verb to regain the Occult Scrap. Okay. And if you don't mind, I'm sorry, I realize that as far as gameplay is concerned, I haven't been doing a whole lot tonight, but it has been an hour, and I did want to get a cloth just to clean my glasses. So I think I am going to take a small break to refill my tea, clean myself up, and otherwise get myself sorted out. So I do apologize for those of you who found this a bit dry. We'll pick it up a little bit in terms of progress inside of the house. And then, of course, we'll have summer, which will give us an opportunity for some more salons and such. Although we'll probably have to do the salon on Friday, I imagine. But I'll be back. I'll be back soon. And for those of you who have been waiting for the ads, your time has come. I'll see you in a little bit. Okay, thank you everybody for your patience, or possibly thank you Algrins for your patience. Let's continue on. So we're already moving up in terms of preliminary meter. We'll get our name day riddle. I think probably we're actually not that far into the day, so I think I might try and generate another name day riddle immediately after. But I can sort that out on my own time. Again, the primary goal right now is to make sure I use all these preliminary meters, or the preliminary meter lessons rather. So once those are in place, any kind of caches, anything else, are a little bit easier for me to open. Is this the way of the wood? But perhaps the wood is not a suitable place for a librarian. A named a riddle, a deceptively intricate riddle that might just teach us who we really are. Gervinus van Loren was notoriously fond of these. So I need to make sure that I keep at least 2 Shapt, 2 Trist, or 1 Shapt, 1 Trist for the two remaining boosts to preliminary meter. But this is not a worry here. We've got plenty of room. All right, Edict's Liminal. What did I mess up? Oh, right, the memory. All right, here we go. Conceive a mothy riddle. Edict's Liminal with scholar level moth plus a memory creates a name day riddle. So the expectation, of course, is that I'm going to use my existing name day riddle within 90 seconds, but we have every reason to believe that that's the case. And if not, I will be very sad, but 30 seconds away from the text that I need, so feeling good about that. The skill is now level 7. Its power aspects have also increased. Oh, we got an impulse, so too late to undo the reading that I'm doing now, but still nice to have. Dead men don't tell no bloody tales. Well, who'd listen? There's sort of fewer places to hide things in... It's not impossible to, but there are basically fewer places to hide things in Book of Hours than Cultist Simulator. And honestly, like, Cultist Simulator does... time is an enemy in that game, whereas this one, it's considerably more relaxed, so I don't quite feel the need to sort of tuck away memories and things to outdo the game. All right, Deaths and Their Evasions. Father Stanislav John Schaller writes of the means and limitation of passage between the orders of the Mansis. No long names hours. Unusually, Father John has written this book in Fusine, for, he says, especial secrecy. He speaks very cautiously of the exceptions that can sometimes be made to the edicts of Chancel and Calyptra, and hints at the means by which he successfully returned a lantern long to flesh. Schaller mentions most cautiously of all that he has been permitted to see a book that speaks more deeply on the matter, but that it was surrendered into the shadow of a covenant stone of the Watchman's Tree. It can be retrieved if the 99th wink is reserved under the Edict's Liminal. Something I overheard in dreams? A Manual for Departure. The author, who identifies itself as the Jekadu, claims to be one of the great hooded princes of the Land of the River. The style is informal, even chatty. No, these doors shouldn't be recorded, but if we had only recorded things before we'd had to leave the fifth history, we would be in a much better state. So here I am writing it down, and if you don't like it, you can sanction me. The Manual for Departure lists a number of strategies, occult, martial, and political, for quick escapes. Many are irrelevant, obsolete, or enigmatic, but the manual does include a number of powerful techniques for opening portals. Towards a Fundamental Aesthetic, or The House of Glass, Julian Cosley considered this his masterwork. Techniques for perception and analysis which permit invidious and apocalyptic conclusions. Probably the most assiduously suppressed book in history, the entire run was destroyed. Even the presses were melted and dispersed, but the manuscript edition has survived. The perfect hegemony of the hours is perhaps eternal, but Cosley proposes and describes confinement inescapable, aesthetic and optical techniques which might contain even an hour, profoundly disrupting the order of the Mansis. He presents this as his own work, but there are hints here and there that he received inspiration or even assistance from the nowhere hour named Snow. Everything ultimately comes down to a choice between eternity and history. There's only one place you're safe from both, and it's not a place anyone would want to be. It's a prison that can only exist in certain histories. Any librarian can use this to establish a history and complete the game, but the prodigal and the archaeologist can win a particular victory. Better now. The Radical Measure Glossed. The original Radical Measures was a manifesto for experimental poetry with occult properties, written in the 19th century by Dr. Aaron Peel. The original is notoriously incoherent. Much later, Christopher Olopoli took on the task of editing and glossing it. He has taken some liberties, but the updated version is generally well regarded. The hours have little time for poetry, Dr. Peel avers, but they have a tremendous amount of time for poets. Olopoli has added a note suggesting that this would in fact be the most tremendous time with poets. As the rows open, Dr. Peel explains, enduring memory opens to the horizon. This is a way of saying something that cannot otherwise be said and is best only written with one's eyes firmly closed. Olopoli's gloss reads, Horizon Sight Synthesis Method, reverse procedure with knock to elaborate Gervinite in the chronsochord mode. Ambrosial, Ambrose Westcott's inventive, one might say pioneering or indeed buccaneering, essays into kitchencraft. Westcott proudly announces his intention to transform cuisine to become an engine of alchemy, a fount of war. Westcott compares the ferocity of fire with the intensity of appetite as, in essence, one essence. A fire's ability to transform and destroy grows when it is offered the correct fuel. So too, he implies, can a sufficiently inspired appetite allow its possessor to consume greatly, strangely, unwisely. Basically, this is the premise of the cook, the thief, the wife, and her lover. The Queen's Turn, a 16th century translation of the Barrowchild's account of Lagia's turn, when Lagia, the queen unsated, was offered the opportunity to enter the service of the Hours of the Triple Knot as long as she repudiated her brother-lover Antaios. Lagia accepts, setting aside the arts of the low red sun associated with Antaios. She bargains, however, for freedom for her daughters. The Hours of the Triple Knot accept casually, knowing that Lagia has devoured her daughters, but wily Lagia has decided in the secret hollow of her heart that she will adopt any who ask if they can prove their fierceness. The traditions described here, the ones generally described as hill and hollow, are associated with Lagia before her turn, but now that she's a name of the Red Grail, they might also be safely used before an altar of the Triple Knot. Alright, so here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exactly what we need. Remembering that, of course, we'll need 8 when we do the final improvement to solutions and separations, but at last I approach mastery. Okay, so one last round here. We did do Temptations of Architecture before, so this is the last of the 3 that I haven't read this session. So obviously I have to read this one again because it's the, well, that or the Sun Disfigured, but either one, or those are the only 2 that, out of the ones that I've read, that give me the memory that I need. So as this turns out, we'll actually have the name day riddle before we have the other memories anyway, so that'll be good. And then we'll probably just use the occult scrap in this case, because it only takes a minute to restore the other one. Going into lurk mode, got a phone call. No, that's no problem. First of all, I don't take attendance, and even if it's a quiet night, I mean, first of all, I've been monologuing on stuff that's not quite Book of Hours. I mean, obviously it's stuff that's, I think, touches on some of the ideas of the game, like the idea of reading broadly and, you know, how that will have other influences. Clearly, that isn't something that comes out of nowhere. But yeah, no, you're not. It's not your job to keep me company, Algrins. Be well. If I don't get a chance to talk to you before I finish, I hope you have a good evening, and I hope you're feeling a little better in the morning. Okay, I think I'm just gonna let this run. So I'm trying to get a bit of a read on, like, realistically, how much of this vault am I going to open up? We're going to have another minute with the consider verb, or sorry, we're going to have a minute for the occult scrap, and then we'll have 30 seconds to get to level up the solutions and separations. The Moth's Gift or mine? Curious hunch. A sudden unlikely certainty. I can move that around. Actually, there's no good way for me to do this. You'll have to do. Sure, I'll live with that. Oh, but then I need to find a home for the Earth sign. Right. The skill is now level 8. Its power aspects have also increased. I should organize this at some point, but... Alright, so 30 seconds... Well, it's effectively a minute until we get to do the... Yeah, we maybe open one cache tonight. But again, it's not a deal breaker if I don't get that done. Might as well move the occult scrap down here in preparation. I'm not going to make another one simply because I don't have... I don't have a... like, I mean, I guess I can try and keep it overnight, but I don't have an immediate use for it after this leveling, so... The account of Kanishk at the Spider's Door. Loch Kahuli, Kanishk's victim and lover, wrote this account, perhaps posthumously. Kanishk sought to become a name. In pursuit of that end, he made Loch Kahuli the vessel of his appetites, promising Loch that they would ascend together. At the Spider's Door, he betrayed his lover. The Chiliarch listened to it happen, and then forced Kanishk into his service. The Chiliarch cannot be denied. Loch Kahuli remained to write this work, and to describe the outer magics of struggle and contest. On the matter and deeds of serpents, this was probably the Prophecies of the Naga rendered into English and illustrated by William Midnight in Paris. Oops. In the 1880s, but it shows a number of divergences from that text. It's certainly quite recent by the standards of VAC texts. The serpent folk, called the Great Hooded Princes, came to know the order called the House of Leith and warred across the miles with them. They made an alliance with the mother of ants, whose children they had been. The text describes how the Great Hooded Princes escaped, or will escape, from the Fifth History, where they had died, or were doomed to die. They engaged in a secret conquest of the land of the Great River called India in some histories, and have ensured that all other conquests of that land are false conquests. By their marks shall ye know them, a monster-hunting initiate of the hour named the Colonel, who identifies herself as Little Sophia, provides advice on finding the weak spots of Long. Little Sophia observes dryly, should one desire to slay an immortal, it is most practical to do so before they become immortal entirely. She details the marks, the changes that Long undergo as they abandon their mortal condition. As the lantern Long begins to abandon its flesh, its skin becomes loose, its bones soften. The sixth mark is to be observed thus, when the flesh between the finger and thumb can be pulled to the final finger joint. That was the quote I was looking for on Monday, by the way. It's not the first place that appears, but definitely it's a quote referring to something in Cultist Simulator related to the Lantern Long Ascension. Okay. It is spring. The landlady has served me a slice of her stargazy pie with the pilchard heads poking cheekily through the hot crust. Rokahat. Sir, let's try that again. Ud Rokashas, an anonymous confessional account of unsanctioned activities by the nuns of St. Brendan's. The title is a Hennebeck phrase that might be translated as "The spirit flees the shadowed places." The author writes guiltily of her dealings with hill children and carapace relics. She suggests she herself has a connection with one of the carapace kinds. Most of these dealings are trivial, but she claims to have arranged the death of the Marcher Lord, William de Braose, called Black William. De Brause's wife, Ava, evidently seeks the abbey's help to free her from her hated husband. Subsequently, he is found in the bedchamber of the wife of Llewellyn the Great, Prince of the Welsh, while attempting to negotiate the marriage of his daughter, also Ava, to Llewellyn's son. Llewellyn takes this badly. De Braose is hanged, the elder Ava inherits his estates and makes a substantial endowment to St. Brendan's. In the author's telling, de Braose was innocent of all but cruelty, and the adulterer found in the bedchamber was a shape-changing undergoer. Towards a Fundamental Aesthetic, or The House of Glass. Julian Cosley considered this his masterwork. Techniques for perception and analysis which permit invidious and apocalyptic conclusions. Probably the most assiduously suppressed book in history. The entire run was destroyed, even the presses were melted and dispersed, but the manuscript edition has survived. The perfect hegemony of the hours is perhaps eternal, but Cosley proposes and describes confinement inescapable. Aesthetic and optical techniques which might contain even an hour, profoundly disrupting the order of the Mansis. He presents this as his own work, but there are hints here and there that he received inspiration or even assistance from the nowhere hour named Snow. Everything ultimately comes down to a choice between eternity and history. There's only one place you're safe from both, and it's not a place anyone would want to be. It's a prison that can only exist in certain histories. The Larkabine Codex. Christopher Larkabis claims to have purchased 2 handwritten copies of the Codex from a family of witches on the shores of the Sea of Marmara. A third was given to the sea. The sister and witch came from the west, where they were born in 2 wombs, one a princess, one a monster. Nevertheless, they loved each other from birth and met in secret to seek union. When the great drought came, the kings of that land tried to sacrifice the princess and the witch, so they sailed across the sea. When despair took them, they flung themselves into the drowning waters, and so they found the Painted River, where they entered the Mansis through the offices of the Red Grail. Nevertheless, the Codex ends with a condemnation of the Grail. Okay, so just for clarification, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're good to go. This was definitely one that I thought was going to be harder, but I am happy that we got through it, so. We'll use Trist this time just because I have a shot, only one more shot, so there is always more to learn. Improve the skill to level 9. So in 30 seconds, I will restore the occult scrap. Oh yeah, we definitely have room. We may actually have room for 2 caches. And it also seems to me that now we actually have some time to plan for the next Salon as well. So if I recall correctly, we had Douglas and Aaron Peel were 2 characters that I wanted to invite back. Okay, so let's think about this. So we've got Aaron wants Moth? I thought he would want Moon. Let me just double check this. Now, it's been a while since I've had Yvette Southey. Yeah, I don't know why this says Moth. I'm definitely gonna lean towards Moon. But I did feed him Solomon's preparation, so... Okay, I'm gonna stick with what it told me. Now, I think there's a couple of ways that I can go with this. So, actually, you know what? If I just look at the book, that'll probably be sufficient. So I was thinking I could do like a deluxe invitations. And in this case, it would be like anybody who needs a very large amount. So like Azita and Aladim. Now, the funny thing is that a lot of these people we would have already brought in. So actually, let's just as a test, let's just see what that might look like. So... yeah, so Peel, Morgan, so I guess the full range for that one would probably be something like Peel, Morgan, Aladim, Azita, Hokabald. That would cover 5. Morgan's always a bit of a weird one, but I think we could do it. Okay, so you know what? Let's make this interesting. Let's actually give this a try. So Morgan. I don't necessarily know what they eat other than people. Interesting. What on earth? Yeah, that's going to be Edge Food and Drink, I imagine. My notes are just a disaster. Okay, so we got 4 of 5. So just a sec. So I'm actually a little tempted to invite Peter Ictistus too, but let's just see. So I've got Eason Douglas Moore. Douglas Moore is definitely getting invited. So Ictistus, Schaller, Serena, Chaima, Arthur Moore, Zachary Wakefield, Aaron Peel's already coming in. Yvette Southey, Connie Lee can't be invited. Fraser, Morgan's coming in. Coquille, Olympie Daymare, Hokebald, Azita. Okay, so yeah, we will add Aladim. I believe Aladim wants scale and no alcohol. Okay. I think I can live with this. So actually, I suppose the next step would be I should figure out what I want to serve. So our lantern options have always been a bit thin. So we have orange jumble, knot cake, Madeira cake, King's Luck pie, stuffed golden marrow, and Cornish honey cake. I think I'm going to actually leave the lantern last. So let's see what mothy things I can make. So our options there: Madeira cake, King's Luck pie, game pie, ham and egg casserole, almonds, Cornish honey cake, mole au jus, knot cake, and honey haunted amber pumpkin pie. The almonds would be an interesting choice. Maybe not inspired, but all right. So then if I wanted to go for Grail, I'm sure we have no shortage of options here. So cold pheasant with grape salad would be an interesting one because I don't know if I have a lot of other first courses. Actually, sorry, let me just double check that about the almonds. Almonds are a side dish. Okay. So for Grail, pudding definitely feels like appropriate for Grail. So our options: knot cake, orange jumble, scrambled egg, jugged pheasant, cold pheasant with grape salad, meringue, marinated roast beef, ham and cheese toast. Like, there's so many different options here. Maybe if I did... pear pie maybe? Or fudge. Why doesn't creamed sugar have a... Plum croutons might be kind of interesting too. Kind of like the idea of fudge though. Okay, for edge, so jugged pheasant, marinated roast beef, magnificent roast potato, onion rings, egg croquettes, roast beef, roast potatoes, game chips, crusty bread, pickled mackerel, pilchards. I like the idea of the marinated roast beef. Okay, so scale. I also just kind of want to change it up in terms of the... Pickled pilchards feels... I know, I kind of like the idea of two sides. All right, so first thing here, let me highlight these. So our options for sides would be pickled mackerel, pickled pilchards. For first courses, boiled eggs, pilchards on toast, egg croquettes for a side dish, oli au jus. I don't know. Let's do the fish. And then we'll do the stuffed golden marrow for Douglas. So that gives me something to think about. Now, it is our last chance to... So the only thing I'm thinking about for the picnic is I know I don't get... I don't get the extra lesson that I would if I had it in one of these rooms. So I think I'm going to go for the refectory this time. So let's take a minute here. Let's get all the cooking ready to go. So first thing we want to do is get some alcohol for the beef. Marinated joint of beef, an ingredient for a higher purpose. Golden marrow. Now, I think we had some spare. Yeah, so I might get a replacement, but we don't need to dig into the... don't need to dig into the basket of vegetables quite yet. Yorkshire pudding would have been nice to serve, but we don't need heart or nectar, so inappropriate for this one. And then we use the knife. Bake a golden stuffed marrow, a dish with heart, lantern, and nectar. Almonds should be... Oh, if we don't have the almonds, I'm gonna be mad. Oh yes, plenty of almonds, so we'll put that on the table. Fudge, so I need creamed sugar for that, so... I don't remember how much sugar I have. Not that much. Was it butter? I'm sure it'll tell me, but... Yeah, here we go. Mixed cream sugar, an ingredient for a higher purpose. Okay, so I obviously have more to do. In fact, with this time, I'm going to go back to Crowcross Sands just so I can try and replenish some of my fish stocks. Alright, and really this is kind of going through the motions with Mr. Kill right now, but I don't want him to get lonely. I could also think about the drinks, but I'll take care of those later. The skill is now level 9, its power aspects have also increased. The surgeon plies the knife and the mason plies the chisel. There are subtler tools than either. Alright, let's ascend this one to the 9 stack. You can do it, my friend. I believe in you. Alright, Trapeze Mahaira. There we go. I will need to work out another target, but because we're at the end of spring, I don't really see any point in doing so until the, until we've dealt with the whatever sort of is immediately in front of me in terms of visitors and the events and so on and so forth. The event may also wind up changing who I invite to the salon, but I'll have a think about that one, let's say. There's a reason I haven't written the invitations yet. Okay. So there's our marinated beef, tangy with the harbingers of a roastful destiny. Roast marinated beef, a dish with edge, forge, grail, heart, and scale. Bake golden stuffed marrow. This marrow was accounted a beauty among its kind. Now it's a dish for those who understand fidelity. I actually really like the transformations for the marrows in terms of their descriptions. Okay, let's see if I can make pickled pilker. Well, actually, I think it's my choice. Let's do pilchards, though. Although I am short on alcohol. It's been a while since I've made an Eigengrau. Extra scale. Pickled pilchards, a dish with edge, heart, moon, scale. And mixed creamed sugar, an ingredient for a higher purpose. We're running short on elements of the soul. There we go. Make fudge, a dish with grail. This knows exactly what it's about. I could offer help with correspondence and arithmetic. There is no school in Brandkrug, and not everyone here knows their letters. Okay. I could try and bring in a... You know what? Okay, as a precaution, this is probably just going to wind up being wasteful, but there's no penalty for doing so. I'm actually going to take the time to read Towards a Fundamental Aesthetic, Volume 2. If I get to do something with the lesson, great. If not, I'm not too torn up about wasting it, but I figure it wouldn't hurt to have a Newman in the inventory just in case. Nothing's history when first it happens. Okay, so the memories are restored. I think only one cache for today, but I can live with that. So we got the records box, the scaled casket, the attaché case, the imperial casket, or the scarred casket, or the ironclad casket. Let's do them numerically. So 1 records box, a treasure stored by a musician spy. What something unregarded, what overlooked delight. Good men don't tell no bloody tales. Well, who'd listen? So all of this is going to get thrown into anarchy if we complete the... Oh, it was mackerel. All right, well, we'll just use the mackerel next time. I guess the nice thing about the mackerel is in addition to pickling it, I have the poaching option, whereas pilchards have to go on toast. Okay. Again, we don't really have any use for these, but I'm going to keep them anyway. Night has fallen, dawn will come soon. I'll wait till the conversation with Mr. Kill is done before I try and save one of the memories. And then we will see what the summer brings. Roast marinated beef. But since we have learnt from all vaporing France to eat their ragouts as well as to dance, we're fed up with nothing but vain complaisance. Oh, the roast beef of Old England and Old English roast beef. You may remember this track from the death of Slim Shady earlier this year. Towards a Fundamental Aesthetic 2nd edition, or The Refinements of Light, Julian Cosley had never wanted or expected to write a 2nd edition of his masterwork. Julian Cosley long regarded Solomon Husher as a charlatan, but his friend Nina Lagasse painted 3 paintings before her death in 1895, and these paintings apparently convinced Cosley to change his mind. With considerable irritation, he revised his magnum opus. The perfect hegemony of the hours is perhaps eternal. Cosley had always championed history rather than eternity, the exceptions, limitations, contradictions of freedom, but Husher's and Lagasse's work convinced him to believe in the paradox of the eternal ending, a means in which perfection might be reconciled with freedom. He's not happy about it. This is perhaps the angriest book ever written in support of a peaceful philosophy of acceptance, but Cosley was always scrupulous about his conclusions. I was actually really happy that Oswin Miao was here to read the description of this. Eternity and history cannot be reconciled. Freedom cannot be perfection, not unless we understand the paradox of the eternal ending, and only in certain histories is that paradox possible. Pickle Pilchards, an acquired and unforgettable taste. And fudge, all the bad things doing a good thing. One, two, three, four, five. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so when the time comes, it's going to be a matter of it'll just be a matter of making the drinks and inviting everyone. Hello. Maricat, the Incastum Terminale of the 5th History, the color of the principle that once occupied the place that heart does now. In the 5th History itself, the cult of Maricat was everywhere suppressed, but it's sometimes been venerated otherwise. 7 Grail, 7 Knock, 7 Nectar. I keep forgetting it has Knock, actually. I always associated Knock with Porphyron. Alright, so we'll let Mr. Kill go to bed. Not really sure what memory I want to keep. Obviously, I can spend some time thinking about, you know, what lessons I want to get and what I'm going to level up. I do have a small list of my sort of next up. So like Rites of the Roots would want Nectar and Moth, but I don't think any of these would be relevant for that one. Furs and Feathers would want Sky and Scale, so that would argue for the Memory Storm or Solace. Embryon Lapidary is actually kind of tempting because it's Sky and Forge and it just needs 2. I think that I'm going to keep the Storm then. Now that night has fallen, I can rest and perhaps dream on the day's doings. No! There we go. All right. So a little bit more weight on opening these containers tomorrow. Not overwhelmingly, because I also have, you know, 2 more books on top of the ones that we already have up here. But as always, the challenge is to make sure that I'm I really do want to advance the memories or the skills that I currently have. All right, memories fade, assistance departs, but the soul is refreshed. Now, because we're crossing over on a month, it's rather important that I not commit myself to anything until I know exactly what we're dealing with. All right, so it's raining. And it is properly summer now. So, current affairs. What is happening in the world beyond Brandkrug? What visitors will the season bring? So, let's start. We'll open up the Scaled Casket, a treasure left behind by an explorer on the eve of his final voyage. What midnight gift? I think I'm going to say I'm not going to worry about hosting a salon first period of summer. I'll maybe set the table and all of that, but we'll talk with Mr. Kill, and let's work towards leveling up one of these skills. So the first thing I'm going to do is take a look at the books that I can currently read. So we've got Edicts Inviolable, which would give us Moon and Heart. So Serpents and Venoms would benefit from the Moon. And that's it. Okay, so that's one for me to keep in mind. Rites of the Roots. Now that's a pretty appealing one because we need 4 for Rites of the Roots, so reading the Serpent Root would be quite tempting here. The Sun's Design. Now that would be Lantern and Sky, and I believe I have 1, 2, 3, 4... Yeah, 4 different skills that would benefit from Sun's Design. And for Pentiments and Precursors, that's interesting. So Serpents and Venoms would benefit from that, although we'd probably have a leftover. Actually, that might work perfectly. Actually, also I want Pentiments and Precursors to get leveled up anyway. Okay, so that's looking pretty encouraging, all told. The Sky and the Scar, that'll also give us Moon and Edge, so yeah. I'm going to bring this one up here. I'm probably going to wind up reading this left to right. So I don't have any edge that would be relevant to this particular one. Ooh, Copperlith and Follows. So this would help with yeah, so really should have done that before I brought up Solutions and Separations, because I think that was the last moth. No, Rites of the Roots does this too. Okay. I think I have a game plan. Sorry, I'm just double checking here that I'm not missing any obvious steps. Nope, we're good. Okay, so the big question. How do I read an 18 moon text? Let's see what I can do with my existing resources. So Edicts Martial is my best bet here. This one isn't in a funny language. 4 for... Well, this is where we throw the Wormwood Dream in, really. Yep, okay. Obviously not my favorite choice, but it works. Moon Culmination. I can master this mystery. Enough moon to match Mystery Moon. Now, this is the 3 and the 3, the St. Chiavi manuscript. So what I'm going to try and do when there's a minute left to reading this, I do also want to queue up the other 2, 3 and the 3, just so we can compare the different renderings. Let's see if I can get the... Oh, I can't because I just used Edicts Martial, so I'm going to need to put some effort into getting that back. I guess I could have used... No, Edicts Inviolable only has 9. Okay. So I'll wait on the Wormwood Dream. So if the purpose of leveling this up is to level up the only moth that I have, or sorry, moon that I have, that would be Serpents and Venoms. So basically I want all the moon and scale that I can get towards it. So Secret Thresholds doesn't work, but Stolen Secrets does. Obviously, Confounding Parables. I think we're back to the other line now. Patterns doesn't help me. Hindsight doesn't. Foresight, Fear, Storm. Well, we had another opportunity for Stolen Secrets. Salt does help, so we're on to the Sea Does Not Regret. Satisfaction doesn't. Regret. Hang on, sorry. Hindsight definitely helps. Because of the scale. I should also be more protective of the Tristan health. I think I'm going to just start with Introduction to the Histories because it's been a while. Okay. So regrets are Winter and Forge, though, so those don't help. Gossip is Rose. Foresight doesn't help. Contradictions does, though. I'm going to do the same argument here. We're just going to start with contradictions from the start. Fears are Scale and Edge, so that helps. I'm almost certainly doubling up some work that's going to happen with Mr. Kill, but of course I'm also going to have a visitor, so I don't even remember where. I think I'm going to do True History of Valentine de Wolf and start cycling around there. The hymns will help. Why are you being this way, Ubisoft Connect? Okay. We've already got the Earth sign. Obviously, that's on the table. And my only regret here is I haven't left enough space for the two Calyptra texts, but that's fine because it'll take us a minute to read the first part of the book anyway. So we're good. I'm going to wait the minute before I start pouring the drinks, just because if it turns out that the Affair of the Unfinished Lark is actually done, I'm going to possibly change the guest list. Oh, I should also be earning some money. I've carried a memory like a flambeau safe through the mazes of night. So I'm just putting the storm... Actually, you know what? We'll just put the Ragged Crossroads in here. Just a little something to allow me to hit the collect button a little easier. Might not hurt for me to make some Eigengrau if I'm potentially going to be pickling a few more things. But like I said, I don't want to throw away too many elements of the soul. We'll maybe make that like a last minute or like end of the day sort of a thing. Hey, intuition. We're going to overwrite it, but... Oh, one more visitor. Madame Olympe Bichet, essayist, illustrator, critic, editor of the Carisham Review. Alright, serpent milk. It does look almost like milk, and it is drinkable, but don't give it to cats or babies. You know, it has been a while since we've had a meeting in the Hall of Voices. I think I have an idea for when I'm going to do that. Alright, so, on Matthias and the Amethyst Imago, Loss, an account of an occult romance. A certain Para, son of Aaron, claims to have written this in a single night as part of his initiation into the Damascene branch of the House of Leith, that order of immortals who rejected their past and future. The laws of the house forbade Matthias to love, the customs of the wood forbade the Imago to remain, so he conjured her a final time, when she had uncovered the shears of Alcapura, and she suffered him to cut the wings from her back so that she might remain, and he suffered her to cut the parts which hold man's seed to keep them from the detestable act. This was love in all its blood and joy. We have cast out Matthias from the house. In the cradle of the roots, Matthias and the Imago left their names, and though their names were lost, they found their name-day riddles. This we recall in solution and separation, so that in the presence of the moth our memories may become our futures. Do this wisely, in memory of the name and the long who gave up their past that they might be together forgotten. The Other Line, one of Samuel Savage's more thoughtful works, an allegorical play about the city Clarity, a city that is also a book, and the sentences which inhabit it. The Lord's Proverbial and the Lord's Disquisitional war in the streets of Clarity, while the punctuants get drunk on ink and supply the jokes, though by Savage's usual standards there aren't very many jokes. The final act sees the Lord's Proverbial unsealing the city Clarity's gate to expel the population into the unknown. The formula that they use for the unsealing is a real one. It can be used with knock and preliminal meter to create a gate sign of power. An introduction to the histories. The 17th century mystic and antiquarian Claude Hersault describes divergent incidents in 5 major histories. The prologue warns at length of the iniquities of one Julian Cosley, a former colleague who Hersault now describes darkly as a worm of worms. It seems Cosley advised Hersault early in the writing of the book, but Hersault later became suspicious. Hersault identifies blood, silver, design, and the worms as the so-called axes of the histories, and claims the so-called second history is the true one. De Bellis Mirorum, an 18th century epic poem by the pseudonymous Solipstos. The poem elliptically describes a war between beasts, weather phenomena, and arcane concepts. It's quite specific about their tactics. The two unjoined and the horn distinguished, consequently blood. The sea does not regret. Æson Fecri, one-time Secretary Salvant of the Curia of the Isle, responsible for the Curia's healing efforts, writes of his experiences in Brandkrug and hints at his travels elsewhere. The sea does not regret the tide, Fecri writes, for when the tide is past, it leaves its traces on the sand, which traces are the sea's memory. Fecri is a keen fisherman and speaks glowingly of the fish suppers of Brandkrug. He also admits that his enthusiasm for the bounty of the sea has altered him, that before he came to Brandkrug he consumed only those things found in the earth. I was the greater thereby, but all of us give up what we were to become what we are. A True History of Valentine de Wolf, written in the third person by Valentine de Wolf. Rarely coherent, though it includes some useful footnotes on falconry and on exotic veterinary medicine. Valentine is obsessed with the meaning of the de Wolf coat of arms, on a field or a chevron in arched gulls between 2 corby heads, eased sable in chief and a wolf sajant sable in base. Long of the 2 birds pursued my blood, yet one is no crow, yet it is darker, long as the wolf rolled itself in gold like a clovered cow, until its slobbering stain our thoughts. And Singlefoot songs. Father Stanislav John Schaller, priest and diplomat, writes of his time on the slopes of Huashan, near the grove of green immortals, but never too near. Schaller's relations with the grove are cautious. It's a library of the tree, but under the hand of the hour named Applebright. In time, however, Schaller comes to be more sympathetic to the Applebright, which he suggests cause harm only when so invited. The Singlefoots of the title are one-horned, one-footed hill things with sweet but powerful voices, powerful enough to open the mountain. The Singlefoot sometimes trample pilgrims, sometimes heal them, sometimes coerce them to enter the mountain and become Singlefoots. Schaller explains that when he found this last becoming too tempting, he decided to return to his homeland. So we're definitely well prepared for the Serpents and Venoms leveling. But I did say that I wanted to do the other 3 and 3 texts. So we'll do the Karasham and then the Vatican. And of course, we're overwriting the intuition here, but them's the breaks. I should find a use for the final understanding. You know what? Eigengrau. No, not the Ragged Crossroads. It's still a kind of possibility. Exactly what Cosley would have wanted his great work to be used for. Okay. Madame Olympie Bichet, essayist, illustrator, critic, editor of the Karasham Review, The Affair of the Unfinished Lark. For 3 years, the sculptor adept Zithimalim Zidane has labored at his masterpiece, an abstract sculpture that speaks with the voice of the desert lark. And now, puzzlingly and suddenly, he is dead. So we already know her interests. In this case, it'll be a forge one, but we certainly have forged texts we can hand off. I should have opened another cache. It's a little late, but that's fine. Something unregarded. What overlooked delight? Okay, so we're going to chat with Olympie right away. The pleasure is all mine, librarian. You've heard about poor Zuthi's death. I knew him in Algiers long ago. He's so sweet, and even then I knew that he would be a very great talent. The government will sell that wonderful piece of Zuthi's for scrap. I know it. But I have a collector in mind, a very wealthy woman. I hope to convince her to invest in it, but I need to understand better the properties of the work. Okay, so again, we have no shortage of forge texts. I'm really just looking to make sure that I don't overdo it. Journal of Walter de Wolf is still a 6. I think 6 is as far as I can go on these. Just to clarify here, this is not, like, unless you enjoy doing it this way, you absolutely do not need to organize the books this way. The justification behind it basically is that the visitors will... So there's actually 2 forces going on here. So basically the visitors will increase their demands a little bit each time. So it goes up by 1 each time you give them a book. Now, you know, you'll have visitors once a season, and you'll have visitors once an event. So duplicate visitors are a thing. They are absolutely not the sort of thing that are going to stop you from being able to, you know, to hand off some books to them. You'd have to be very unlucky in terms of the books that you were drawing and just not making that much progress in the house. Now that's changed a little bit in terms of House of Light, because technically, as long as you have enough ink or you have a typewriter and sufficient patience, you could theoretically bring people back. Now, I guess you'd be bringing them back more for things like lessons and that, but I believe... I'm actually trying to remember if you can bring them in on a... I'm trying to remember if you can bring them in on a an additional... like visit. I think you can only do the event once, but you can still like satisfy their curiosity and get the Spintria. So with that in mind, right, you can actually bring someone over multiple times. You can raise their level to a point where you do actually run out of books. But the answer to that is you now also have the ability to write books. So, with your various, in this case, it would be forge skills, and then there's the different combinations of inks. You'd be able to get a pretty decent run of text that should satisfy even very high level visitors. But I mean, honestly, if you like, I think this is the lesson of most games, right? Like, if you try to break them, you'll probably find ways to do that. And maybe you don't want to, like, I'm assuming you are not allowed to complain about not completing the story that you were interested in when you have just been mainlining. I think I just lost my shilling. If you've just been mainlining a character for the Odd Spintria, like, that's on you if you're like, oh no, I don't have 22 forge to solve that with. So, oh, come on. It is summer. I'm sitting on the bench outside the Sweet Bones, eating crumbly cheese and nettle wrappings and good black rye bread, soaking up the sun. I suppose at this point I can start pouring all the drinks for the salon. I will probably prioritize the Ross Cragen whiskey if I can get rid of it, just because I have so much. But Forge and Rose aren't big ones for me to deal with. Okay, so we want the this one first. Oh, excuse me, just 1 second. The Three and the Three, Kerishim manuscript. A more recent version of a much older text, this book describes the operations of the Chancel and the Calyptra, two triads of hours with subtle, far-reaching powers and responsibilities. It has been heavily censored, but even so contains potent secrets. The deepest knowledge is safeguarded by the Covenant of the Watchman's Tree, whose patrons are Calyptra, the three flowers on the Watchman's Tree, blood, soot, and snow. Calyptra may be known as night, dawn, eclipse. The chancel may be known as threshold, mirror, shell. Calyptra and chancel are two, as Janus III. The Three and the Three Vatican manuscript, a church-authorized version of an older text. This book describes the chancel and the calyptra, two triads of hours with subtle, far-reaching powers and responsibilities. It has clearly been reworked to fit church doctrine. The deepest knowledge is forbidden to all mortals except those who seek it beneath the Watchman's Tree. It is Calyptra that planted the tree, but it is the chancel, the cruciate, that has elected Calyptra. Who then elected the cruciate, or is this, as the saying goes, a matter of Janus? The sister and witch is cruciate, but the witch and sister is not. Even those powers that demand a conjunction are not always conjoined. When the sister is nowhere, does that mean nowhere sits in crucium? The Three and the Three, St. Chiavi manuscript. This book describes the operation of the chancel and the calyptra, two triads of hours with subtle, far-reaching powers and responsibilities. Of all the extant versions, this one has best survived the interventions of the calyptra. Certain knowledge cannot be learnt by any entity below the rank of No, outside the Covenant of the Watchman's Tree. The enforcement of this rule is Calyptra. The three who enforce it are Calyptra also. It is said that Janus elects Calyptra, that the chancel is the judgment of Janus, that Janus is the wound in the law. The Watchman's Tree is a compromise. If Calyptra could end it, they would. If the Watchman could end Calyptra, he might. Between their planes conflicting, sparks illuminate the angles of unmade law. 3 rules. The hours are bound by their own edicts, even the chancel and the calyptra. That's why their deepest rules are secret. In certain histories, if we know the deepest rules, we may know what even the chancel and the calyptra may not do. Any librarian can use this to establish a history and complete the game, but the revolutionary can win a particular victory. So I'm just going to take a second here to note the Newman. Okay, 5 heart, 5 moth, 5 scale. So that doesn't immediately help me for my... Oh, no, sorry, the scale helps me for the Serpents and Venoms. The substance of the surface is difficult to resolve, almost as if it weren't there at all. So, let's get to work on Serpents and Venoms. I'm just going to double check here. So the goal here was to bring Serpents and Venoms up to level 8. This is a little more straightforward at the start because we only need to work with 3, but obviously once we're at 7, there's going to be a bit more of a challenge. I also forgot that I was opening a cache, so we're just going to need to wait a little while on that. Then we'll cycle through the books again. All right, what overlooked delight? Another Maricat. I'm actually kind of happy I'm getting this because Maricat's a little more difficult than the other. Well, Lethe's not that hard for me to make, but I kind of feel like Maricat at the moment is a little bit more difficult for me to get. I could be wrong on that, and I'm just being a baby. Let's take the time to generate another Wormwood Dream. So I need a memory for that, but we've got a couple of easy sacrifices to make. In this case, I think the rain. Craft a Wormwood Dream. Recall a forgotten crime of moon and winter. And let's get working on the Serpents and Venoms. So the ideal here would be to work on basically anything that Mr. Kill could potentially generate for me. So the real priorities here would be Intuition, Stolen Secret, and Hindsight for a start. And of course, I'll get these back. So for Intuition, let's go. Let's actually just read these from the start again. So against the foulness of, against the Sisterhood of the Knot and the foulness of their depraved customs. Maybe we'll do the Velletri interviews again for our Stolen Secret. Just gonna double check. Yes, that's good. And then Hindsight. What do I want for Hindsight? I guess we keep moving left to right on that one. This may be enough. I hope that it will be enough. Thank you, librarian. No! Oh, right. I still need to bring Mr. Kill in. So this may invite the question, like, why are you bothering to get these replaceable memories when you're always talking with Mr. Kill? It doesn't seem to give him even the option of being able to give you memory that you need. The thing is that it's only 30 seconds to be able to level up a skill, whereas it's a minute to read a book. So we have the potential of generating the memories that I want, and then I can make a determination. Okay, it's better for me to preserve like X, Y, or Z, and then I can sort of cycle through. I can use some of the ones that I know Mr. Kill won't generate to augment the ones that he's already generated. Now, in practice, this usually only means 1, maybe 2 memories if I'm lucky. But it's still just a nice little system to have in place to try and make the most of my my resources. In reality, though, we're probably going to run out of lessons before we run out of memories, but that's a separate matter. Okay, more money. I could offer help with correspondence and arithmetic. There's no school in Brandkrug, and not everyone here knows their letters. And then, of course, in 2 lessons, we'll be back to opening up the second vault. Oh, and sorry, I did say that I was going to work out the drinks for the salon. So let's do that now, because we're obviously going to invite people tomorrow. So, Douglas with Lantern. I think Cater and Hero Second Flush Assam is the order of the day for that one. We certainly have quite a bit of it. Actually, I'm just going to write this out so I can... moth drinks. You know, the funny thing is with the moth drinks, they're always like all or nothing. So Lethe it is. For Grail, Witching Tisane or maybe a glass of wine. I'm just trying to think what the... Oh, you know what? Fragrant Chalice. Edge, I think that's another Cater and Hero. And then Aladim, I think, goes for anything as long as it's not alcoholic. I thought I had a scale drink that I could give him. Not one I can remember offhand, though. So maybe we'll pour him a cup of tea of something. I think I've got leftover Honey Scar Jasmine from something, so... Okay, so that definitely gives me enough to work with. I think, yeah, the Cater and Hero's already here. Before I do that, let me just take a look. I seem to remember we had a pot of Fragrant Chalice somewhere else. Oh, you know what? The drinking cocoa might be good as well. Oh, I remember. It was the coffee. Yeah, we're going to get fancy with this. All right, poured out. Let's see how many of these I can fit. So we wanted 2 of those. Okay, so... Right, and then the Lethe we already have. Although, obviously, I'd like to make a replacement for myself when the time comes. And the time is now! Yeah, it's actually also been a while since I've drawn up some... Well, no, hey, I don't need to draw up more water. I need to use the water that I already have. You're joking. There's gotta be room somewhere. Come on, I believe in you, game. Game doesn't believe in me. Let's try that again. Let's see if I can make that now. Definitely not this one. God, I can never remember the Lethe. I can't remember if it's a beverage or a liquid, so I'll put the beverage in for a start. And the Hive's Lament just for the... I'm not going to build it that way, I'm just going to make sure that I have enough for... Yeah. Okay, it is nectar, and it does have to be a beverage. Oh, that's interesting. So... I don't really have... I mean, I have the dandelion wine if I want a nectar drink, but at this point, I think just putting in the earth sign and then reading the book again is probably a slightly better use of my my time and resources. Okay, so we'll read Durasha Quirkum again. The skill is now level 4, its power aspects have also increased. So we'll see what Mr. Kill gives me. Poured out. You mean to tell me there's no room on the table at all? Not even beside Adim's Precarious. Alright, I like living dangerously anyway. So... we'll need to do the invitations. Those aren't too hard to sort out, though, just based on the skills that I have. Alright, the Gossip doesn't do anything for me in terms of Serpents and Venoms, so I'm going to wait for the relevant skills and then just fold those in. And we'll do the same trick again in once we go for the level 5. Maybe I don't have to, actually. We'll see where we're sitting in terms of the existing memories, but... Okay, against the Sisterhood of the Knot and the foulness of their depraved customs, Hieronymus Hypnerotomachus wrote this furious screed about the sinister influence of the Sisterhood of the Knot on his own Church of the Unconquered Sun. Hieronymus claims that the powers served by the Sisterhood of the Knot made an arrangement. The Thunderskin loved the Yew, and the Grail destroyed him as restitution for the destruction of the Axe's loved ones. Hieronymus's writing becomes incoherent with rage at this point. Hieronymus recovers his composure, eventually, to describe how the Thunderskin entered the Mansus through the Peacock Door. This, Hieronymus insists, is abomination upon abomination, but then that most abominable of doors has always been an abomination. The Hissing Key, an account of the ascent of the hour called the Mother of Ants by the Bossk scholar Mek of the Theban branch of the House of Leith. Mek is not sympathetic to the Mother of Ants, who he calls the Milk Thief. He reviles her for her part in the death of the Seven Coils, which he presents as a treacherous conspiracy. The Milk Thief conspires with Elegian Echidna and the hour-to-be called Chiliarch, now more generally rendered as Colonel, to unseam the Seven Coils with feathers and drown her in salt. The Colonel thus ascends to hour status. The jealous Milk Thief, once the Colonel's priestess, seduces Echidna into lending her the Hissing Key to enter the manses through the Savage Door, beginning her own ascent to Name and ultimately Hour. Velletri interviews. Interrogation of a man named Lacombe, a former Nocturnal Branch inspector now identified as terminally robogoid. Lacombe is not especially lucid, and the state called robogoia evidently includes a malady of the lungs which causes coughing fits. He weakens audibly over the course of the interrogation. He is questioned about the disposition of various unsanctioned items recovered from Nocturnal Branch raid on Castle Ortuccio in the region of the Fusine Marshes. He is, however, defiant as well as incoherent. Lacombe insists that the items have been put to good use. He derides Nocturnal Branch as the lackeys of Calyptra. Alarmingly, during the last few minutes of the interrogation, he begins to insist that his interrogator should burn the library. He waxes enthusiastic about the fire he wants to see, leading to a final coughing fit, after which the interview ends abruptly. So no benefit to holding out now. We will level up Serpents and Venoms. Again, we only need 4 in this case, so Stolen Secret, Hindsight, and Intuition. We can give up the Fear as well. Probably should have done that before. And we'll need 1 more memory before... for the end. It's actually kind of tempting to use the 3 rules because I'll probably read another Newman text before too long. Yeah, so we actually don't need the new memory. Never mind. So satisfying to have come so far. Improve the skill to level 5. I kind of thought I'd be doing a bit more reading, but I'm not going to complain about it because it just means more time to handle these caches. And then I can also prepare some invitations. I'll get on those now, actually. So Douglas, Aaron, Morgan, Azita. It's probably easiest to invite Morgan here. Request Morgan's presence. I have enough here to craft a letter inviting Morgan to Brandkrug. Now, if it doesn't turn out for Morgan, I can invite other people as well. An afternoon spent profitably reading newspapers to the curious, writing affectionate letters for the lonely, steering farmers through the requirements of the Ministry of Agriculture. It is summer. I'm sitting outside the bench on the bench outside the Sweet Bones, eating crumbly cheese and nettle wrappings and good black rye bread, soaking up the sun. Okay, our next... What am I doing? Ooh, we might actually be... No, Tredes Mahira will still do the trick. Request Peel's presence. Ava's desk is actually quite useful for this this group. Durasha Quercum. In English, the title translates roughly as The Account of the Oaks, but this is Nathaniel Darcy Ever's fascinating if haphazard survey of the occult properties of every tree he can find, not just oaks. In Persia, Taxus Picata, the yew, is called Sorkdar, which is the red tree. There they had long understood the Grail root. In later times, the great king of Pontus had beehives set in the branches of the oldest of the female trees. The berries of the Pontine yew open the door to death, but the honey of their flowers opens a different door entirely. This is not the great king's Mithridate, but one who has suckled at the great yew fears poison no longer. Perhaps they should. Nathaniel is here distracted, however, by the toxic properties of certain inks. He does mention more usefully that the minor ink of power Ugol can be brewed through the rites of the roots with the assistance of the aspect nectar. Now I just need to post it. Okay, Azita. Skill is now level 5. Its power aspects have also increased. So we'll do the same trick here. Actually, we can just hit refill. Now I didn't want to lose 3 rules. Let's take the confounding parable. Just because I can rest on that. So at last I'm something of an authority of this. And let's go back to Crowcross Sands, see if I can get myself some fish. What has the sea seeded today? And let us hope it is equally possible to forget this again. For some reason, I forgot the word. No, I didn't. I just put the Ragged Crossroads as a temporary placeholder. If there are laws which apply only in Dream, then it must be that there are crimes which can only be committed there. Okay, so we've got some leftover memories here if I want to do something about that. So the main focus definitely is on these invitations, but in terms of who I'm inviting, it's really just a question of Aladim and then Douglas. So I think the rest of the day should probably be geared towards... I think I'll replenish my Eigengrau. We can actually really do that with a little bit of everything, but... quenchings and quellings ought to do the trick. I'm going to want to mostly hang on to my Elements of the Soul for the Salon tomorrow, so maybe I won't be reading another book. But I'm sure there's a couple of other... Let's think about all the winter, higher level winter. Again, this is just kind of throwing whatever I can against the wall at this point, so... Rhyme and Remembrance needs a moon, so... Oh, okay. Nope. Don't think this has a moon. This might do, though. Okay, we don't use that. There may be something in Putrefactions and Calcinations. We still have Whist here, so nope, Ugol. Oh, Ugol! I didn't appreciate that you could make Ugol out of winter. I mean, it makes sense in retrospect. But that's kind of helpful, actually. Sure, let's get an extra Ugol. Like I said, I'm really kind of using up the end of the day. I should be able to open one more cache. That'll leave us with 2 more for tomorrow. And the good news there is that I have enough in terms of the the ingredients for the salon that it won't stop me from being able to accomplish my main goal of hosting everyone. Nope, that was unexpected. Okay, so it's Aladim and Douglas Moore. So we need Rose for Ibn Aladim. We can do that at the Vagabond desk. And then finally, Douglas. Douglas is not that hard to invite, particularly with Disciplines of the Scar being the level that it is. So there are a few people I haven't invited to a salon yet. I do want to try and fill out those numbers. Some of that is driven by basically who's a good candidate to invite in light of the event that's going on, or the decision that I want to make in terms of resolving that event. Sometimes it's also just a question in terms of whether or not there are existing relationships. So for instance, the reason why Douglas is being invited is because there was a connection with Aaron Peel. There's actually, I think, another Aaron connection which I missed out on. Like, I forgot to make a note about it, so it's sort of lost to the erased notes. It happens sometimes. But I'm not going to get too torn up about it. We definitely have time for one more cache, so on to the Imperial Casket, a treasure stored by an exiled empress. We'll use the Arab on this one. What sovereign wonder. And again, I'm not going to worry too much about the memories for today. It's really more about, we'll keep one and then we'll see how the salon goes. I am potentially also going to need to invite someone to replace Morgan, because it may just be that Morgan is not an eligible guest. I think that's actually potentially quite likely. Potentially quite likely probably doesn't make sense, but like I would not be surprised if that happened. But again, we've got plenty of people who will want Grail when the time comes, so I'm also not freaking out over the possibility. All right, that's on the bridge. Let's put this ink. All right, I mean, if I want to do that again, I do have the time. I won't go crazy with it, but there's at least a few basics that I can knock out. This is just kind of giving myself a bit of a supply for either future salons or for pickling, marinating. There's a few. All right, 3 will do. Night has fallen, dawn will come soon. So we'll see what Mr. Kill gives me, but I think probably the Confounding Parable is the one that I want to keep. Hindsight is helpful, but so is Confounding Parable for the stuff that I want to accomplish. And another earthquake name. All right. A little bit of a shame there, but we already know that I can get it again, so it's not that big of a problem. Vase of Rushes. I was not expecting that, but there we have it. All right. I'm actually feeling pretty good about what we're getting into today. The only thing here is this is a little closer than I thought it would be. I think all these are destined for the bridge. Yeah, we'll be in good shape to start the salon. What I may do, I may save at lunch just to see if I can figure out when I get that extra sort of round, because the extra round is something that's definitely helpful at this point. At this point of the game, it's actually quite helpful for me to be able to have more than one, or sorry, to have an extra kind of crack at it, just because we know we're going to be able to satisfy our visitors' curiosity, and as a consequence be able to get another lesson, and I do need the lessons. So we're going to invite Morgan right away. I'll probably wrap up after this, but I just want an idea about whether or not I'm going to need to do another invitation. So send an invitation to a visitor, invitation to Morgan, stamp, envelope, send. If the postmistress examines the letter and deems it sufficient, it'll go with the next post, she assures me. All right, one to peel. Now we get to answer, so Mademoiselle Margot Matutine, socialite, yachtswoman, and under the name Morgan, an Alucite, Elysian. The former means, among other things, that she eats people. The latter means that, among other things, that she is not to be taken lightly. Now, she wants Sky. So all that Grail effort I put in, no good. We may replace the... So I'm thinking maybe we replace the roast beef with jugged pheasant, and we replace the cocoa with Blue Crown tea. No, we did the fudge for her. So I'm gonna need to find... Ooh, a sky pudding. Well, that's an interesting little challenge for me. I don't think there is a sky pudding. Okay, so let's take a minute. Main courses and first courses. I think we're still going to go for the jugged pheasant. Actually, you know what? I haven't done scrambled egg. But then I need a pudding. A pear meringue would satisfy Moth. Yeah. I think I'm going to do a pear meringue, but I want to just double check. These go over here. I'll move out the fudge. Sorry, I just want to make sure that I'm doing this sensibly. Okay, so there's our pear meringue. Okay, so what am I satisfying with this pear meringue again, though? So the pear meringue was supposed to be for... Forge? Winter, Grail, Moon, Nectar. Yeah, I seem to have been under some impression... Oh dear. So we're trying to find a moth replacement with a pudding. It's the Cornish honey cake that I'm looking for. So the cake batter is a little more tricky to get. But you know what? We already have one, so let's just move... Yeah. So I'll first find the Cornish honey cake. I can always make a replacement later. There it is. Under no circumstances should this ever be confused with Devonshire honey cake, which everyone in Brandkrug could instantly identify as an inferior variation. Okay, so Aaron's satisfied, but we're still missing the 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, we're still missing the sky. So scrambled egg with egg and butter. And actually for that, we just do... Ooh, I should probably talk with the chicken soon then. Because that's my last egg. Make scrambled egg, a dish with grail, heart, scale, and sky. So yeah, not quite how I was planning on things going, but it all turned out. Aaron is the next one on the list because I am not 100% sure about that moth. Sacre bleu. Okay. So, with that bombshell, the honey cake isn't on the list after all. So the easiest question would be, is there a moon pudding? Yeah, the baked pear meringue. Oh, God. All right. And then we ditch the Lethe, too. Okay. So you're out. There's got to be a nice, easy moon. Well, if I'm going to do that, let's at least take one of the ones on the bridge. Oh boy. Sure, we'll work with that. All right. So the blue crown, the scrambled eggs, everything else is the way it needs to be. Please tell me I'm already inviting Douglas. Yes, okay. So I'll get the last of the invitations sent out, and then we'll call it. Stamp, envelope, send. I'll have to remember to restore the Arab because I'm not quite there in terms of being able to throw it away for the purposes of the day, but we'll be fine. Like, it's not going to be a major problem. Let's make it easy. Okay. Yeah, did it to me anyway. We have our 5 guests for the salon. It'll be a bit of a wait because, like I said, I wanted to try and see if I can host lunch and get an extra memory. I am willing to alternate a little bit, so to pause or unpause to save or reload, just so I can clarify exactly how that works. But I'll try and make sure that I save a little bit closer to the actual time. In terms of things I'd like to do reasonably soon, so I've queued up a whole bunch of memories, or sorry, a bunch of elements of, sorry, let's try that again. I've queued up a bunch of skills that can be committed to the Tree of Wisdoms if I run short. So a perfect example here would be something like Faust or Core. Now these are it's pretty unlikely that I'm going to run out of any of these skills, because what I'm really looking for here is, I think, 5 or 6 different events, and the likelihood of 6 repeated events for a single element of the soul is quite unlikely, particularly with the diverse group that I've brought in here. But I should at least allow for it, right? So a couple of situations where that could happen. I don't know if it's the character's interest or their taste, but if it was based on taste, you could see how Mademoiselle Matutine and Douglas would both be drawing on my Faust here, right? And I mean, I suppose maybe the whist in the case of the lantern, but I don't get to control that, right? It's not provide the following aspect, it's provide the following element of the soul. So this playthrough, I have all of the elements of the soul that I need this time around, but I don't know the quantities that I'm going to need. What I do have in terms of a backup, though, is most of the skills that I need to commit to the Tree of Wisdoms to get the things that I need are ready to go. I just haven't committed them yet. And then in the worst case scenario, I think I'll be able to live if we don't get to see a dialogue bit. It'd just be nice if I could do that. In any case, all of that is something that we will handle in a future episode. I know this was a quieter one today and I was very chatty, but I hope you had a good time. I will be back Friday to do the salon. We'll do the salon reasonably quick, close to the start, so I will try and make sure that I start at a somewhat reasonable time. But as always, some of this is going to depend on the time that I start streaming. Or, obviously it depends on the time that I start streaming. What I mean by that is it's going to depend on when I get off work. Also, I'm getting a rather frightening bitrate symbol from Twitch, but I think you all can see me. I'm hoping you all can see me. In either case, let's find somebody to host tonight. And I will thank you all for hanging out. Obviously, my job is to bring the entertainment, even if there aren't people chatting. And I do see that there are a few actually very long-standing viewers, which is always nice to see. We have got Will Shand, who is currently doing... what is he doing? Games and demos. So this usually means he's playing new things sort of from the dark corners of Steam. He's the best available. Actually, sorry, I didn't check to see, was anybody doing Book of Hours? No, nobody is doing Book of Hours. So I will leave you in his capable hands. He's definitely got a fun broadcast. I am going to get some sleep. So... all right. Thank you. I was a little worried when I only saw like one person saying coming in. But yeah, please have a good time at Volshan's. Just a reminder, I will be back Friday. I'll be back Monday, but I think next Wednesday, it's the third Wednesday of the month, so that I'm going to have off. Again, I'm not sure if there's going to be any unofficial meetup, but I could also just use the time to catch up on a few things. So until then, have a good night. We'll see you in the next one.